grows corn, wheat, grain, sorghum, and sunflower. He's also the state executive director of the Kansas Farm Service Agency. He uses his leadership skills to oversee many FSA programs to make sure that our food is safe, abundant, and affordable. On behalf of the Canton-Galva FFA, I'm very excited that we are able to host him this morning to hear his input on the future problems that the agricultural industry will face. And now I want to pass the mic over to Coach O to give a little bit more of a personal introduction.
For the last 20-some years, Linda and I have been good friends with David and Lisa. Got to coach both their sons, Clay and Luke. So we went through the highs and the lows of some stuff, state championships and things like that. But Dave's both of them have always been supportive of what we did at Sharon Springs. They have one of the biggest farms. I mean, they've got all over western Kansas. And that was one issue in the summer with these guys. I always lost those two for about 2 or 3 weeks for harvest. So that was never a good thing. They were very good as far as coaching our teams and helping our teams. And they've just been real good friends. And Dave obviously has risen in his career in the ag department. And could all of our FFA people stand up, please? So there you go. Out at Sharon, we never had an FFA, and we never, you guys can sit down. We never had an FFA, and coming from Indiana, and they can tell you some stories. Their sons, I didn't know what a combine was, I didn't know what wheat, never seen wheat. We had corn in Indiana, and that's all I had. So when they started coming up in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade, they were always telling me about, well, you gotta go do harvest. And I'm like, what's harvest? And combines, I didn't know what a combine was and all this stuff. It always made fun of me. Luke was my student aide for 2 years, junior and senior year. He had a little running joke about that. So as far as farming, then I get here and I find out what really an FFA program is all about. You guys, from the first year up until now, it's just, they're very active. They're always gone to somewhere, which is always good. That's not a negative thing at all. It's one of the best FFA programs, I think, considered in the state of Kansas. But like I said, I'm not real familiar with FFA, but what I do know these last 2 years is we've got one of the top-notch FFA programs in high school around this area. So I'm very, very happy to bring in Dave. It's, like I said, he's a pretty big weight here in the state of Kansas for the agriculture. I hope he can lead you on a path to maybe be what he is one day. So nice round of applause to Mr. David Schemm.
Thank you, Coach O. And thank you for the invite. Great opportunity here to be able to speak to all of you. I will tell you absolutely it is always a highlight any chance I get to engage with a younger generation that is absolutely vital to our nation, vital to ag and everything. Just following up a little bit on what Coach O said, they're very dear friends of ours, very special place in our heart. Had the opportunity to work with both of them. I was subjected to the role of school board for about 12 years before I was finally able to get off of that. But it was absolutely a privilege. And Coach O, I know the boys hated it and loved it. You would yell at them, but you know the only reason why you'd ever yell at them is because you knew they could do better. And they figured that out. And Linda, I don't know what your secret is. I am very poor at English, and yet those boys play good. And Lord, they know English like I haven't been able. I just amazed the quality of teachers they are. So I'm going to talk a little bit here today tune out just a little bit when I talk about ag policy, but I think by the end of this, you're going to see how it ties into you. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about my background here. I came back to our farm at Sharon Springs in 1993. Now let me give you a little bit of background when I come back to the farm then. For those of you who don't know, during the 1980s, there was a mammoth farm crisis that occurred across this country. It was a combination of extremely high inflation rates, low commodity prices on wheat, corn, that stuff. It caused a lot of farms to go bankrupt, farmers to go out of business. There was a mass exodus from rural America and from farms across the country, not just in our state there. So when I came back to the farm, all the farm families, all the farm kids were being told not to come back to the farm. Go somewhere else. Go to the city. And so our ag world, our farm saw a mammoth exodus, not only from farming, from farms, but also from our ag fields. So once I came back to the farm there, I decided, as I started to engage, I have a certain amount of peculiarity. This is something I want to talk about. I want to talk about my talk here. I believe that I needed to be engaged with life. And so, one person will tell you, one of the things I've done a fair amount of dirt car racing on dirt tracks. Spent 7 years doing that, run several different track championships, a lot of trophies. And the way it took me to that is I watched dirt track racing 3 times at the local track, and I decided, why am I sitting in the stands watching when I can learn to be engaged? So I went out and bought a race car, much to my wife's chagrin, and we started dragging our 2 boys around various tracks, dirt track race. And so when I started to view farming, I decided I needed to be engaged as well. And so that's when I decided to get involved with our state wheat growers organization at the time. Like Coach said, I'd grown it before, but we didn't have an FFA program locally. And so I did that because I saw the challenges that we had out there from when I'd come back to the farm and what the 80s crisis had done. I once had a CEO in Washington, D.C. tell me, kind of referencing Washington, D.C., he said, you know what? People in this town that can find a problem, can identify a problem, or a dime a dozen. The person that can find the solution is worth their weight in their gold. How many times do we see out there people criticizing, saying this is an issue, that is an issue, but the people that we truly value and need, the people that can find the solution to it. And the only way you can find a solution is if you start to understand the problem and start to know and listen to the people. So it's part of engaging with people. So when I started, that's when I decided to get involved with the Kansas Association of Wheat Growers. Started out by going to their meetings. Eventually, I got onto their board, and eventually, I was elected onto their officer team. Okay? So, when I was elected onto the officer team, I know I needed to get around the state. So I started trying to visit other members around the state to try to listen to what their perspective was as well. During that time, as I worked my way through the officer team, I started serving on the National Wheat Growers Boards. Part of the function of the state wheat board officer team is that when you're a president of that team, you also serve on the National Association of Wheat Growers Board. I served on that board. By the time I finished my tenure at COG, past president, I decided to run for the officer team again. I wanted to be a part of that solution. So at that time, that's when I then ran for the National Association of Wheat Growers officer team there. I was elected. It was a contested election. This was not a shoe-in. So you have to realize that you have to face that fear of rejection when that goes through. That's where success starts to lead in life, is when you're willing to step out. So I went for that. I was elected onto the National Association of Wheat Growers team. During that time there, I had the opportunity to testify on 2 different farm bills, both the 2013 and the 2018 Farm Bill. I testified in front of the Senate twice. I testified in front of the House once during that time frame. That is nerve-wracking. Let me tell you that. So, I've kind of been leading up to something here. Make sure I go. So I've talked about being engaged. One of the ways that you're engaged in life is by interacting with people and stepping out of our comfort zone. So what I'm going to be doing here today is we're going to have some interaction here today. Okay? I'm going to have time for question and answer throughout. We've got burning questions here coming up. Definitely want to talk to you on that. But I'm also going to be asking questions of everybody in here as well. Because I want to start to drive home how important ag policy is to you, but also how important it is for you to be engaged. So, I'm going to ask everybody a question. And everybody will be answering. So, we've got to get a little bit of exercise here. We're going to start this way. So, I'm going to ask a series of questions here. Stand up if you think the first Farm Bill was written before 2010. I'm going to give you a hint. Everybody needs to stand up. Good. Guess what? You are all correct. The first Farm Bill was written before 2010. Now this is where it's got to get a little more challenging. Stay standing if you think the Farm Bill, the first Farm Bill, was written before 1970. So if you think the Farm Bill was written after 1970, sit down. Okay. Stay standing if you think the Farm Bill was written before 1940. Stay standing if you think the Farm Bill was written before 1910. All right, we all sit down. First Farm Bill was written in 1933. Permanent legislation was later passed in 1939. Okay, that's when it was. Bonus question. Who in here, okay, raise your hand if you know what USDA stands for. What that stands for. USDA, raise your hand if you know what it stands for. Right there, yes.
United States Department of Agriculture.
Come down here. What's your name? What class are you in? Congratulations. Here's a $10 McDonald's gift certificate. Does anybody know when USDA was established? Under what president?
Never mind.
If you have a date, you can tell me.
1930? I was gonna say like 1918 or something like that.
No? Yeah, it's right there. Nope. Go ahead. Nope. No. The United States Department of Agriculture today employs over 100,000 people. Did y'all know that? They employ over 100,000 people. It was established originally and only had 8 employees in it under U.S. President Association of Wheat Growers. Well, let me give you a little bit of background. I talked about being engaged and being committed. When I served as the National Association of Wheat Growers president, my tenure was cut short a little bit, in a good way. But I would tell you this much, I believe in being engaged. Just like a young man, I said I'm willing to answer a question. Engage life. Okay, all of you engage life. I visited every single one of the membership states of the National Association of Wheat Growers. My tenure there, was it 200 days I was in my, because it's a one-year term that you serve there. For 200 days, I was gone from home for 180 days. Visiting, testifying, engaging with industry across the nation. But during that time there, I got a call one day and was asked to serve as the state executive director for the Farm Service Agency, which is an agency underneath USDA. And so at that time, I terminated my presidency with NAWG and started to serve as the state FSA director. I was responsible for 500 employees across the state of Kansas, 96 county offices. Once again, life is about engaging. And so one of my primary goals when I did that was I decided that I was going to be an effective state director. I needed to get out there and visit those offices. People out here in your local communities, your local county offices that work day in, day out for local producers. And so I visited every single one of those 96 county offices. I've actually been to all 105 counties in the state because it gives you perspective that this state is a very diverse state. A lot of differences across the state, but a lot of the same challenges. I can tell you off the top of my head, you know that this state is a big rectangle that is cocked really hard on its edge because it goes from 600 feet above sea level to 4,000 feet above sea level. It goes from an average rainfall of approximately 13 inches to 44 inches, depending on where you're at in the state. That's a lot of differences. And so there's a lot of differences in how farmers have to farm across the state. So a slide, I appreciate the introduction. Slide modification, I'm going to put on the introduction. My state executive directorship, it is a presidential appointment. It's a political appointment. So underneath the last administration, the Trump administration, when it ended, I had to step down as the state FSA director since it is a political appointment. And a new appointee was appointed, which is Mr. Dennis McKinney, who is currently serving as the state executive director. But I was asked by U.S. Senator Roger Marshall to serve as his ag advisor. And so for the past couple of years, I've been serving as U.S. Senator Roger Marshall's ag advisor across the state here. Because I know the importance is to continue to be engaged. So we're going to be engaged again here. Next question. All right. Raise your hand if you think ag policy has directly affected you in the last year. Right. Keep your hands raised. If you think ag policy has directly affected you in the last month. Keep your hand raised if you think ag policy has directly affected you today. Right there. How has ag policy directly affected you today? I like that. Come on down. What is your name and what class are you in? 8th grade. Congratulations. $10 McDonald's gift certificate there. Every single one of you has been impacted impacted by ag policy in the last 3 hours and will be impacted by it in the next hour and a half. You're going to eat today, aren't you? Yep. School nutrition programs are ag policy. That's what they are. Now I want to talk a little bit now about. So, what you have to understand, ag policy is food policy. A couple of stats I want to kind of give you. According to National Geographic, many of the worst wars we have ever seen are accompanied by starvation. American journalist Alfred Lewis was once quoted, "There are only 9 meals between mankind and anarchy." According to the World Food Program, 10 out of the 13 current conflicts occurring have a food crisis that was either caused the conflict or resulted from the conflict. And last of all, one person that I very much like to reference, he has since passed away. I've had a chance to interact a lot with his daughter. This might be somebody I looked at with on this question. I don't think anybody in here would know this. Anybody know who Norman Borlaug is? Did I see it? No, don't think I saw it yet. Norman Borlaug is considered the father of the Green Revolution. Now let me clarify on that. It's truly, he was considered the father of what the original Green Revolution was. He was a researcher. He passed away, I think it was in the 2009 year. But during the 1940s and 50s, he paid his doctors, and he spent a lot of time working and developing and creating disease-resistant semi-dwarf wheat. He actually went down to Mexico to develop it, but he also introduced modern farming techniques such as, putting fertilizer on crops, using pesticides. He is credited with having saved 1 billion people from starvation. Norman Borlaug, he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, added to the National Ag Hall of Fame, given the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Congressional Gold Medal, as well as his statue is actually in the U.S. Capitol. But what I love is the quote he said when he accepted the Nobel Peace Prize. "You can't build peace on an empty stomach." And that is the challenge that we are now facing as we look towards the future that we have today. And that's why I'm saying that ag policy, which is food policy, is affecting all of you and will continue to affect all of you as we go into the future. Current world population right now is a little over 7.5 billion people. By 2050, you know what the projected world population is supposed to be? Who said that?
10 billion.
You are correct. 10 billion people. That means we're going to have another quote-unquote green revolution in order to feed everybody, because if we do not feed everybody, we will have more wars and conflicts occurring around this world. And when we have wars and conflicts occurring around this world, we don't have peace, but we don't have civilization, we don't advance a society, and we cannot face the challenges that we are going to face even without those wars. All right, we need to do another bonus question, but we're also going to, well, I might have to say that one, because I want to have some questions and answer kind of when I get to there. So, kind of going to give some last opening thoughts or closing thoughts here before we open up that kind of question and answer. And I do very much enjoy question and answer, and I will tell you this much. I know quite a little bit about ag policy, if you can imagine, and I can go about any route you want to go with anybody that has questions. The biggest single to be engaged. That's what's led me after I have, not being afraid to be engaged, not being afraid to ask questions, not being afraid to give answers. And I don't care if they're right answers or wrong answers. One of the biggest things we will all face personally is the challenge of being rejected. The challenge of being told no. The challenge of being told you're not fast enough, you're not strong enough, you're not smart enough. Always enjoyed, philosophically didn't necessarily agree with him, but Charles Darwin, when he studied the Galapagos Islands, always interesting what his observation was as he studied the species that was on the Galapagos Islands. And do you know what he found on those species that survived on that island? It was not the fastest species that survived. And number one was the strongest. And for all of you straight-A kids, and I can too, it wasn't the smartest ones that survived. It was the ones that were most adaptable. You're going to be told no, and that's why I'm putting forth. The greatest challenge we actually face, each of us face, is you yourself. And being willing to be told no, and still going forward to be finding the solution. Einstein, what is he often quoted by saying? 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. It is work, it is the ability to meet the challenge and overcome and to adapt. That will find our solution to the future in being able to feed a world and being able to have a society of freedoms. We can raise our children and grandchildren and live our lives. That's why I'm simply going to say this. As I said, don't be afraid to be told no. Don't be afraid to ask the question. Don't be afraid of that rejection. Because that is going to be the challenge that will be laid out in front of you for you to overcome. And that is when you will truly find happiness. Because I will put forth to you the greatest happiness you will experience in life is the joy in overcoming a challenge. And you can never overcome a challenge unless you truly get rejected and learn to overcome that. You have a library full of books in here, an internet full of people that were told no, and people that were rejected and still succeeded. Again, the biggest challenge you're going to come to your future is you yourself. You want to get to where I have been here now in life, I would tell you this much. It comes by doing small steps and not being afraid to be wrong. So, with that said, I want to open up just some general questions because I want to hear you kind of ask some questions about ag policy, ask some questions about food policy, or any other questions here. Hands, questions? Yes.
You said you were a racer, right?
Yeah.
What's your race car number?
My race car number was a 4S. I started out in what they would call a hobby stock class, which is basically looks like a normal car. It's been gutted. It's running around about 450 horse. Eventually I went to the modified class, which doesn't necessarily look like a real car. It's got open wheels in front, runs about 700 to 750 horse. It can be exciting. I've been probably the worst wreck I ever was in. I ended twice and rolled 6 times. And my wife was running out on the track. Other questions? Yes?
What is the best piece of advice you can give a young person in
So, I would tell you absolutely this much, and this is one of the things, the challenges I'm going to be identify is people just like you, young people that are taking an initiative that actually are engaged into it. That is what we need. We need you to be engaged into that because you are going to be the leaders. Come on now. All right. Name, class, and what do you want to get involved in? What are your future plans?
My name is Landon Hernandez, and I'm in the history class.
Okay.
And I want to get involved in some type of agriculture, like cattle industry.
Okay. Okay, perfect. Well, you got to get the last $10 gift certificate to McDonald's here. And I'm going to talk a little bit more. Cattle industry, that's a huge one to absolutely be getting involved in. It's a major industry of our state. In fact, it is the number one. When you look under ag, it is the number one gross amount of dollars brought into the state is within the livestock industry here. And as we look forward to the future, right now, we have roughly around 32 million acres in the state of Kansas, and only about 15 million acres of it is actually farmable. The other 15 million is grass. And in order to feed 10 million people, we're going to have to utilize all of that ground effectively and efficiently. So absolutely hand in hand, we start to look at the challenges of the future there. So when you go to there, when you go into the industry, even now, have you ever been to KLA? Kansas Livestock Association. They are the top livestock association in the state there. Those meetings are open for anybody to go to. There's numerous amounts of them. That's definitely on the livestock producers. There's the meat packers industry. There's small there, but it's being involved. I talk to countless CEOs all the time with ag groups across this state here, and they are very much wanting high school. I know there's several different initiatives and thoughts going on concerning trying to definitely take individuals like you and put them on a fast track guided path, not just starting to engage better at a high school level, but put them on a path to help you define where you need to go as you go through college or into the industry there. So get out there and engage. Being a part of obviously FFA. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to all of the FFA here. That organization, I know Beth, the CEO here of FFA, well in the state. She does an outstanding job. Got some new initiatives that I've been able to engage with her on several times here. It's a great organization that has come in here and just absolutely, if you look at the original founding, a great history, but they also came in here and redefined themselves and made themselves very applicable to today's society. So keep going down the path here. We want to get out there and get engaged more than just FFA too. Other questions? I will pick on people. Yes.
I was just wondering, is there any sort of initiative in Kansas that deals with bees and their importance with the agricultural world?
So, there are some various initiatives. One thing about bees, kind of industry, when you actually go out there, have some good friends, do very well, the state director out there in California. It's interesting when you look at the whole bee industry there, you get into much more specialty crop areas, it's a huge impact. It's interesting, a little bit of background information to all of you. The bees are such a crucial pollinator out there, especially in California where you get into much more your specialty crops like your fruits, some of your vegetables like that literally there are some very large bee farms that they have between 20 and 40 semi-trucks loaded with nothing but bee hives that are literally contracted to drive around the state, stop at a location for a period of a week, a month, and release those bees in that area to assure pollination of those fruits and vegetables in that state. That's how big that bee industry is there. From a state perspective here, I'm not necessarily aware of a lot of big initiatives going on, but it's interesting in this state, specialty crop is a very fast growing area in the state of Kansas, and the need for, then by extension, definitely the need for the bees there as well. Obviously, the neat thing is the honey, the product that you can gather off the bees as well. No, I'm not really necessarily very familiar with new initiatives going on to that. I know from a government standpoint, program, there are definitely programs out there to help beekeepers there. And if you do have hives, I would strongly encourage you at some point to stop by your local FSA office to talk to them, because there are some programs that can help those people involved.
Well, I don't, but I taught at an agricultural school in Arizona.
Mhm.
The children are just taught from a very young age, you don't ever tell a bee.
Right.
I mean, that's like sacrilegious for them.
No, it's definitely a growing industry, and like I say, it's very much a growing industry here in the state, just with the growth and the stuff that's dropped there. I saw another hand, yes, up there.
Because of extensive irrigation in western Kansas, how's the farming community looking at the depletion of the overall aquifers and how they're going to regulate this?
You know, that's a long conversation. and I can agree with it. I can give you a little bit of history background on mine. Where my mom still lives in the house. Our house is actually just on kind of the same farmstead, a little bit to the south of where my mom. My granddad moved that location in about 1950. He dug a well at that house, and then 3 years later had to move it about 100 yards to the south, and after about 7 years had to move it a quarter mile to the south because that location went dry. And then I think that one lasted probably about 12 years, and then I think it was when my wife and I returned home and moved it to a baby irrigation well. And then about 15 years ago, we gave up on that and went to city water. So very much related. It's a very challenging question out there. It's just simply the reality that haves and have not. And the situation is if you have water underneath you, a 1,500, 2,500 acre irrigated farm is a fairly large farm. Very easily, it can make a living for a family. A 2,500 acre farm right in western Kansas can't. So what that brings is the ramifications of, do you want to make a living continuing farming or not if you don't have your irrigation? Reality is that the law is continuing to be depleted, and we're having communities out there that are being severely impacted. I was recently interviewed by a couple of different newspapers on it. Having had irrigation, we still have a little bit of irrigated and not a lot. Here's the reality of it. We've got to shut down that water. You've got to have a priority first. The first priority is, do we have domestic supply? If we don't have domestic supply, what does it matter if you have all your irrigation wells out there still pumping that water out and nobody living in that town? That's the harsh reality of that there. And so, I can point out to Lakeland community who spent $6 million on a water treatment facility, because the ramification they're dealing with right now is the Ogallala. Think of it as a large lake, okay? Large lakes, they have various impurities in them. So as the water gets used down in that large lake, when you get to that bottom there, you get a much higher concentration of those impurities. And the number one impurity that they're dealing with, and it's not necessarily radioactive, it is radioactive, but it's not at the level there, but it's just simply because it's a heavy metal, it's called uranium. And they had to spend $6 million because the levels of uranium were going so high that they had to treat that and try to pull that uranium out of that drinking water for them. And so our little town of Sharon Springs has moved its city well 3 times. now that irrigation with the well for the city is now 10 miles south. Yeah, 10 miles south. So that's the reality of it is we've simply got to start to reduce that. The problem is we're just continuing to pump out of that over wall at a faster rate than what it is regenerating. But the challenge with it, and honestly it becomes very political, is that when you start to suggest that you're starting to very, like I said earlier, you're impacting people's livelihoods. Because there's definitely some irrigation farms out there that they would not be able to, I can name multiple ones out there that a father and son or father and two sons, and if you force them to go dry land, it might be able to support one family, not 2 or 3 families at a time.
Are they regulated on how much?
Yeah, absolutely. And don't want to get necessarily down too much in the weeds, but the challenging part with that is the LEMA's local area management associations are coming in and basically doing a self-imposed limitation on it. It's also being backed by KKA, Department of Ag, to help reduce the amount that they're pumping out. But some of the challenge, those have to be adopted by all of the area people there, and let them kind of cool their water, do some of that stuff. The challenging part with that is that that does help. All those wells out there are regulated already. They all have an amount of acre feet that they can pump each year. The problem with that, though, is that amount that they can pump each year was established when the well was first put in. Personal example, we had an irrigation well that my dad put in the 1960s, and originally was able to pump 2,500 gallons a minute. And so that's what you're allocating. There's a 2,500 gallons per minute. I shut that down, that well, in about 1995, because it was only pumping about 100 gallons. So the problem is when the state comes in here, because water rights very much be like the private property rights there. So the state comes in and says, I'm going to reduce you 10%. So you're going to reduce my 2,500 gallons by 250 gallons. What does it matter? You're still, reality is you're not saving the water that's there. It's already gone. So that's the challenge. Very complex, very challenging there. I have had discussion with several senators and representatives and KDA on it multiple times. I don't see any silver bullet on this. It's just going to be some very hard decisions if we truly want to keep the viability of it out there. And my personal opinion is this: I come back to priorities, and of course I have definitely a soft spot with ag on it. But first of all, we have to look at domestic as a priority. We have to maintain our communities out there. We need to maintain domestic, and then I would follow that up very much quickly because of the ag industry out there. We need to follow that up with livestock and even feedlots now. Feedlot is a mammoth industry out there in western and southwest Kansas, and that's where we've got to preserve that and make sure we keep that technology. Talking to all of this we hear, that's where we need solutions. That's where we've got to continue to work with things of GMO and drought resistance there, because if we can move that target enough and have those crops produce enough more grain, that we don't have to rely on the irrigated as much to make the gap to feed those livestock out there. It's a challenge for you that we have. The industry's working on it, but we continue to need new ideas. So I saw some other hands. Yes, right there.
When was FFA created? Like the first FFA organization?
Darn it! I think you hit me with one I'm not going to be able to for sure answer. I know I've read it before. FFA. Who my FFA members, who can answer for me when it was founded?
1923.
Thank you. Very good, very good. Your name, what class are you in? Oh, you were wrong? Oh!
Yeah.
28, all right. Yeah, I did not know that one. I knew it was back in that time frame, but I did not know. It's a good question. I saw some other hands right there. What's that again? finding ways to get around and getting to it there. You know, I've taken, I'm going to take a couple things. We're exploring adaptability on our farming operation right now because we're embracing various technology and ways that we can reinvent our farming. We're trying to expand our farming and see where we can do it. Yes, we farm out west in Wallace County and Logan County, and so we know what dry country is like. We also farm not very far from here, probably 40 miles. Yep, in Morris County, by White City. Farm ground there. And so I've had people tell me, well, you can't farm that far away. Well, I'm figuring out how to farm that far away. I was told when I was state executive director, well, I'm going to give a brag out to my wife here. I was told when I do that, there's no way that she could learn how to farm. I will tell you this much. Don't ever let where you start from limit where you can go. Because I tell you all I was. I was only a little old western Kansas wheat farmer boy. My wife was a little old southwest or southwest Texas goat girl. And when she first came back, Coach O, I got to tell you this. She didn't know what a first and 10 was. She didn't know what a 40 was. But you saw how much she would yell at the football team go by. She knew exactly tell those refs how they were doing and not doing there. So she learned. We started racing. She didn't even know how to change a tire. When we got done, she could adjust the valves in the car. When I became an SCD, it scared her. By the time it's said and done, because right now today she can tell you herbicide and classification categories. And so the key is, that's how adaptability has helped us come there. Is learning that whatever the challenge is, you will have a choice when you get told no. Okay? And I'm going to give you a push. You'll have a choice when you get told no. You will have a choice in life when you face a challenge. And it is either to capitulate or to overcome. My wife and I have the biggest challenge in our life that any parent will ever face. We had a very young son. And we had a choice. You can capitulate or you can overcome. And that's why I'm saying you have choices in life. I don't care what challenge you are. You can either capitulate or you can overcome. Don't expect. I'm going to tell you another little one. So, when my wife and I told her, I said, I'm not going to go on a diet. I said, but I will do a lifestyle change. I'm just change perspective of how I'm engaging life. I give a lot of credit to our old son Clay. I think he got it kind of started on the route there. So, here about 10 months ago, we kind of went on where we have now. I'll tell you this much. We kind of decided we're going to be even more engaged. We walk, run 4 miles every day. We've already walked. I'm not ready to run. We've already walked 2 half marathons. Between us, we walk right at 130 pounds. I read books every day. Read a couple books. Atomic Habits, outstanding book to read. 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, another good book. Another one I really enjoyed, easy reading book, is The Subtle Art of Learning How Not to Give a F-double-asterisk-C-K by Mark Manson. Another good book there. But that's where it comes about. That's where adaptability and learning how to make yourself better, even if it doesn't matter where you're at now. So that's how I have. Hope that answers the question. basically what happens with plants is plants all develop based on their environment where they are at, okay? So the reason why moss grows in water and nowhere else simply because it's an aquatic plant, and moss requires, most plants, although there is a few exceptions out there, but most plants require photosynthesis or sunlight to be able to grow, and then they also require moisture or water. And that water helps to move the nutrients around the plant there. So moss is simply growing because it's an aquatic plant. It's just like, why would we grow in water? Well, because it is not an aquatic plant. So, good question there. Which is interesting. So photosynthesis, I always like science here. You know why the leaves turn orange and golden in the fall? Science teacher there. Oh, yeah.
Because their chlorophyll in their cells is done.
That is correct. Actually, the colors are always there because those colors are a result of the sugars and various nutrients within the leaf there. But it's actually what occurs is the photosynthesis stops. The photosynthesis of chlorophyll is green, so that's why you get colors in the fall. It's actually the loss of the photosynthesis in the plant. So I think we're about out of time, Coach. I'm getting the nod. I'll take one last question, maybe. Okay. I love it. What does great leadership look like? I've seen leadership. I've seen lots of leadership. Worked with lots of great leaders there. Met countless governors, ambassadors, senators, reps, everything like that. Great leaders is what I've been talking about. Great leaders move forward in the face of adversity. And you have a challenge as you look forward in the future, and I don't have a solution. But it concerns me. And I will tell you what it is. It is social media. I'm concerned about social media. I see positives in it. I do. I'm not just condemning it, but I am concerned about it. Because social media, have you seen the amount of people that tear people apart when they make comments? I bet almost every single one of you here have been addicted to that. In some fashion or the other, being torn apart. And that concerns me. Because it concerns me on two fronts. One front is to stop people from speaking up. I would tell you this much personally. I love to engage with people who disagree with me. I love it. I've got a friend of mine in Manhattan. I meet with probably at least monthly. Absolutely on opposite political spectrums. When we sit down and talk, when we get done with the discussion, he's like, man, you're a breath of fresh air. I said, well, I enjoy talking with you. Because I see some of what he comments. He himself is guilty of it. Commenting on social media. And I could see where he would make people hate him. And that's not good. Because his points of view are valid. He doesn't do it in a good manner. And this is what concerns me about social media. So you have a challenge with social media. It is an opportunity to have the discussions, but so often it's not productive. So figure out a solution for that. I don't have that solution. I am concerned about it there. Thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to speak with all of you today. I am very passionate when it is the youth here and the future generations we have. It is in good hands. You guys are willing to engage, and thank you for engaging today.
We want to, as a FFA chapel, thank Mr. Schemm for coming and taking time out of his busy schedule to invest in the next generation of not only agriculturalists, but also just people in general. So thank you again. We hope you accept this token of gifts that we got you, and let's give him another round of applause. One more thing. All FFA chapter